Sunny Hill. The Uncle Artie is here. And her program today is about her father's service during the Korean War. Brenda graduated from college and went to England, worked for the BBC for about 4 years, then started her own production company for another 5, and then came back here, taught up to Caribou at the Technical School Center, and has her own company. She and her husband Alan. It's called Crown of Maine. And I'm sure that you've seen some of her documentaries on PBS. A lot of them play on there. There was the last one was the Acadia bike ride.
Cycling Acadia.
Yeah.
And you might have seen this one. It's called Old Main Swedish Farms. My husband's from New Sweden. I was very lucky to meet a Swede and marry a Swede. And so when I was lucky enough to move up there, I went around with Dan Olson, the Scandinavian scholar in the area, and we interviewed the last of the Swedish speakers. And they're on here speaking in Swedish, and then we have subtitles in English, so we know what they're saying. This was shown on main PBS.
The other one we've watched is the Christmas in a Rustic. That one's excellent, and that plays every year on PBS.
It plays every year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I will.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, our film is very short. It's, in fact, Trudy mentioned that I taught school. I did for 15 years, and while I was working in the school, I thought, well, you know, the students, it's helpful to them to learn history. So we had my father's collection of photographs from the Korean War, and we interviewed him about his experience, and then we were able to use the pictures to go with his story, as well as some live footage. But anyway, we're going to show this to you. It's very short. It was made by my students. And then we have some Korean War veterans here who maybe could add to the story. We welcome you to tell us about your experiences as well. So thank you very much. And as Trudy mentioned, they call this the Forgotten War, but the men who were in it certainly haven't forgotten it, nor their families. So, yeah, and their mothers and families, absolutely. Okay, so Bill has very kindly offered to be here for technical assistance.
Make it go. Finn to a rescue.
Thank you, Bill.
I'm kind of married to it.
But I think it's your wife who's finished, right?
Appreciate it.
Okay, so I think if I just press this button, this should start.
So you hold your breath, gonna find out.
And if it's too loud or too low, let me know and I can adjust the sound here.
That's a good sign.
That's a good sign.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really good.
That should be some sense. Yeah, here it comes.
Needs to be louder, Brenda.
Don Nasberg has taken up video production in his retirement. At the age of 72, he enjoys recording scenes from nature, especially wildlife. But capturing scenes isn't a novel hobby for him. His interest in photography began years ago when he served in the infantry at Sandbag Castle in the Korean War. Between October of 1952 and September of 1953, he photographed shots of his army pals miles from his native Maine. Taking pictures at the front is far removed from the photography Don does today. But his memories are never far from his experience in Korea, where he served as a young man in his early 20s in a war that took place more than 50 years ago. Don is still in touch with one of his army buddies, Ollie Seidel, from Washington, Minnesota. We asked Don about his war experiences.
Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I was drafted.
How old were you when you were drafted?
I was 22. Yeah.
What had you been doing since you graduated from high school?
I was working in lumber camp, cutting logs in the Drew Valley and the Ellisville Plantation up by Moosehead.
And how did you find out that you'd been drafted?
Well, we'd work all week, go on a weekend. So we went out this one Saturday. Took us all day to get out. We had a snowstorm. We had to shovel out to get out over the mountain, big mountain there. We finally made it out. And then I had my greetings to go to the army. drafted.
What did you think when you read it?
I can't remember, that was a long time ago.
Just kind of vaguely remember what you felt when you read those words?
Well, I probably figured I should have stayed back in the camp. But I didn't. I said, well, they'd come get me anyway, so I figured that was it.
How did your family feel? Your brother and your father and your uncle and your grandfather? Do you remember them saying anything at all?
I don't remember saying anything, no. I don't remember a lot of things I don't remember. No.
So, where did you train?
Fort Dix, New Jersey.
What sort of things did they put you through or expect you to do?
Oh, just basic infantry. Taking hikes, 20-mile hikes, and DRI circle there, and shooting a rifle and all that stuff. Just basic infantry stuff.
So you went to Fort Dix, and at what point did you then find out, okay, now you're headed for Korea?
Well, they had 16 weeks of basic training. So at the end of 16 weeks, you get your orders to go either wherever they wanted to send you. Some guys went to Alaska, some guys went to Korea, some guys went somewhere else. All depending on where they wanted you. So at that point in time, it was me and another fellow decided to go to another school they had for 8 weeks training for leadership training. So me and him went there. The rest of them left and we stayed another 8 weeks. So we got 24 weeks altogether training.
And once you arrived in Korea, what did you do then? Where did they send you then?
Well, all they do is just have a place to go by track from here, one place to another, and they took up the line, where the line was, front line. Yeah, that's where we went.
And whereabouts did they send you?
Well, that's where they sent me.
To the front line, but where was the front at that time? Do you remember the name
Well,
of
at
the
that
town?
sign, I think it was, yeah, it was Sandbag Castle. The front line was at that time was Sandbag Castle.
So what year would that have been?
52. October 52.
What did you think when you first saw the place?
I don't remember, Brenda. I don't remember what I thought about it.
Did you look around and geez, there's a lot of sandbags around here, or what did the land look like, or the place look
The
like?
place is just all mountains, like all, not all big hills and mountains, what it was, all rocks and ledges, whatever. And they had, the bunkers were made out of sandbags, and right on top of the whole hill up there was a big bunker, and I guess that's what they call it, Sandbag Castle, just give it a name, that's all.
So what was the sort of strategy at the time you arrived? What were they trying to do at that point?
Well, at that time, we already had the DMZ line there, and we were there, that's all. We were on the line, just stayed on the DMZ line.
Were you like there patrolling and watching, or were you launching any kind of offensives, or what were you doing?
Well, mostly you stayed on the line, but they also had patrols. You had to go on patrols every night. Somebody had to go on patrols and find out what they were doing. Ambush patrols and stuff. And of course, they were sending in mortars and stuff. And of course, they tried to run over you once in a while, try to get you out of there. And stuff like that.
What do you remember of those times, as far as the time you spent with the other guys? What did you do, like in your spare time, what did you do?
I don't remember, Brenda. Really.
Guys, did you tell stories, did you?
You didn't have a chance to play cards. You were up there either patrolling or watching or something else. You didn't play cards or anything. You didn't go back, you stayed right there. And there were so many days, I can't remember now, it was 30 days or 60 days, and then you went back for 30 days in Korea. So it's been a long time.
Did you have friends or people that you were with who were killed?
Yeah, yeah.
were killed and what percentage came back, do you think?
I don't know, that stuff I ain't gonna talk about, Brenda, I don't wanna talk about that. I don't know.
I just wondered, you know, what were your chances of surviving in a situation like that?
I don't know what the little chances would be. So,
How much do you depend on your army buddies in a situation like that?
100%. It depends on you and you depend on them. Make sure you're fighting for your country. The only thing you're fighting for is to keep him alive, or he keep trying to keep you alive. That's what you're fighting for.
And when you look back now on the experience, do you feel it was worth it, that you were doing something important? How do you view it now, 50 years later?
Well, it's pretty hard to say, really. Come down to it. If they prolonged that war, I believe I'd have been there, a lot of them wouldn't have been at the time I was there. But the Chinese didn't want to, the Chinese wanted the prisoners back, and they wouldn't send the prisoners we had back, so they just kept prolonging it for 2 more years than they should have. That's one thing, I didn't know about that at the time, but I found out about it afterwards. At the time, you don't know anything about anything, well, they just send you over there and that's it, and come back, if you're lucky, you come back, if you ain't.
And how did you feel when they had the 50th anniversary celebrations for those who, or it was not really celebrations, but it was like a time of remembrance for people who had fought in Korea? What did you think?
Well, I think it was a good idea. Not for, especially for us, but for the one that didn't come back, what it's for, it ain't for us. It's the one that didn't get back, is what it's for. Any of that stuff.
Now, there was one time when they let you go on furlough, and didn't you go to Japan or something?
Yeah, they give you 5 days on and out in Japan, yeah.
What did you do when you got there?
I ain't gonna tell you. Forget it. What I do when I get there. Well, I asked you what I did when I got there.
Well, I remember a story about going in a restaurant, they had nice white tablecloths and stuff, and you had been living in the dirt and the sandbags and all that, and it seemed pretty good to see a white tablecloth.
Yeah. Because I went to a restaurant, I just when I landed at the airport. We flew over from Korea over to Japan, and they had some hanging on some airport place there, it was military. They had lights and tablecloths and all that stuff. That was different.
So on the front lines, you didn't have even electricity or anything.
We had candles running right with, if you're lucky, you had a candle right level with. They had no electricity there. You couldn't run lights in if they had it.
So that's it. What year was that? Something like that. One thing I wanted to mention, is that, you know, you can kind of tell Dad was not one to talk too much about the war, really. But when I was in England, I went back on a trip and I was staying at the Quaker International Center. And there are people there from all over the world. And it's kind of a funny place because it's kind of like, more like a dorm and stuff, and you go through with your tray for breakfast, and then you can just sit with anybody you want. So I saw these guys sitting there, and I didn't know if they were Chinese, Japanese, or I couldn't tell what nationality, but I thought, well, I'll go sit with those folks. So I went and sat with my tray, and I introduced myself, said I was American, and they said, well, we're Koreans, and I looked. I got nervous. I know I shouldn't have, but it was knowing that Dad had been fighting them, the Northern Koreans, and I thought, well, these probably aren't North Koreans, but anyway, I said, how interesting. And then later on, I thought, well, I might as well tell them my dad fought in Korea. You know, it's something we have in common. My father's actually been to Korea. So I told them about it, and they said, your father fought in Korea? And I said, yes. And they said, please go home and tell him thank you, thank you, thank you. Because we would never have our freedom without him. So to any of you who served in Korea, please know the people there really appreciate it. Sorry I'm getting emotional, but it was quite an emotional experience. But anyway, so now we can hear from Uncle Artie about his experience in Korea, which I think was a little different from Dad's.
Well, it was, Brenda. I'm not sure they want to hear about it.
I'm sure they
Yes, we
do,
can.
unless you had too many trips to Japan.
I only had one, and I'm not talking about that. No, when I was there, it was entirely different. In fact, I believe Donnie and I passed on the ocean. I was
Yes.
going over, he was coming back. This would have been in probably August of '53, something like that. My orders had been cut, and I was on my way, but they said it's been signed, and I was tickled to death.
Oh.
Isn't that wonderful? I think the only thing that, and Donnie alluded to it, the only thing that was good about the war was that it produced a country where people can live free,
Yes,
and they can build their factories, and they can drive their cars, and you can go from here to there, and you don't need a pass, as opposed to North Korea,
yeah,
where there is nothing. You don't do anything, you march in line, you say yes or no sir, so forth. And if it hadn't been for the Korean War, South Korea would have been just the same. They would have been a completely dominated thing.
yes.
So, you know, I had, my time there was relatively simple.
Right.
I was an auto mechanic.
An auto
I
mechanic,
ran the motor vehicle,
right,
so we kept the radios running.
right.
One of my jobs was I was in the 5th Air Force, 1st Radio Division, and we had about 40 trucks loaded with radio equipment out at a site about 5 miles away. My job was to keep them running. I didn't have to fire at anybody. I didn't get fired at. It was very
Wonderful. Well, you're here to tell the tale.
fun. I'm here to tell the tale. I'm glad Donnie was here to tell the tale.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And
You
with
think
it,
you think of the people who were about 43,000 killed,
Yes.
Americans, something like that.
yeah,
And you have sympathy for them for having done that. But
yes.
think of their mothers,
Oh, yes,
you know.
yes. And families, it's so sad.
It was sad.
That's right.
But the upshot of it was that we did get a decent country out of it. Unlike
Yes,
currently, we just kind of get into things and people get killed and nothing gets done. You know,
Right.
It's kind of too bad.
mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's enough of that. It's warm in here.
Well, there was some others of you who served in Korea.
No, I never went to
You never went
Korea.
to, and Lauren,
I ended up in northern Italy after
Oh,
we got out of basic training. Everybody got orders, all going to Korea. And then I got orders, I went along. Maybe they didn't think I was good enough.
oh, I'm sure you were good enough, they needed you somewhere else, that's all.
So, but I was in from 51 to 54.
Yeah.
okay, and you were in
And,
Italy, North Italy?
I was in Trieste.
Okay.
You know where that is.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Near Albania.
yes.
Pardon?
That's interesting.
Is it across from Albania,
In Yugoslavia,
Yugoslavia?
right on the border of Yugoslavia. There's where Tito was. And we were keeping him on his side. And I guess he was keeping us on our side.
Something.
Yeah.
But every May Day, they had always trouble.
Oh, really?
That's communist days.
Riots.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
So I'm not really a veteran.
So you're a Korean here, American. What branch were you in, Cal?
Army. I was a cook for the 98th Army Band.
And do we have, is there anyone else here who served, you served in Korea?
Lauren did.
Yes, whereabouts were you in Korea?
I was with the 31st Regiment, Georgetown Company of the 7th Division, and I only spent in the war a few months. And then I got shipped out to Japan also, to Yokohama. And you mentioned you had a good time there, I believe.
Well, it was better than Korea.
Yeah, it was. It was. Anyway, I don't have a lot to say really. I was online and in a trench watching the truce day come about.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
And American fighter jets were still strafing the other side of the valley. And then when the time came for the truce, all of a sudden everything ended.
Wow.
You see,
Wow.
that's exactly what Donnie told me.
Yeah,
He says they knew it was coming, I think 10 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
would that be right? And they had thrown everything they could lay their hands on across the line, and the Chinese did the same,
yeah.
coming across. And then the 10 o'clock hit, and it was just dead silence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
different.
Could you believe it when it happened? Was there a moment of disbelief, like you just couldn't believe it was finally
Over.
over?
Yeah, I could. And I volunteered for the draft in the first place because I was tired of waiting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I kicked myself in the butt for wasting 2 years of college when I could have been over to Korea during those
Yeah.
heavy years. But anyway, it all worked out.
Yes, that's right. And how do you feel about that war when you think back on it? I mean, in terms of helping to keep South Korea as an independent country, do you think that was an important thing?
Yes,
Yeah.
because after the truce was signed, I stole a Jeep and went down to Seoul. I wanted to see for myself what it looked like, and it was just absolute destruction.
Real
Everything, I couldn't get a Jeep through the city
of soul.
of Seoul.
Wow.
So in that perspective, and now you start thinking, my God, what have they done? They've come back from all of that.
Yeah, they
Or-
recovered. Yeah.
It's a very modern country, isn't it?
Oh, yes,
I
very
have,
much so.
I have some pictures up there that I took
And
of Seoul,
Yeah,
in the bombed out, windowless buildings that were
yeah,
there. Yeah, it's,
I'm gonna take a look at it.
good. That's how I was stationed there initially, north of Seoul.
Yeah.
So I got to around the city. Yeah, take a look at it.
Now, did any of you that were there bump into others from Maine or even from Monson? You bumped into somebody?
I bumped into 2 people from Greenville,
You did?
and I was talking to the son of one of them just 2 days ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
And, yeah,
Do you recall their names? Who they were?
Allison Daigle, and I don't remember the other one.
Maybe Dago.
And do you know of any from Monson who went but didn't come back from the Korean War?
No,
Good, that's a good thing. If
I
not,
had my lieutenant was killed, taking us through a minefield. And it blew up, of course, and it caught him right here. So I remember carrying part of him back out. And then what I remember most is a few days later, they had taps in the valley, and we were sitting on the side of the mountain, listening to taps, and it was echoing
Yeah.
all over the.
Wow,
That's about it. Thank you.
yes, yes. Hmm.
I'll tell you a little story about a friend of mine that was there
Yes.
in Korea. And when he told me about, I lose my train of thought, so I have to, anyhow, he got captured over there, was a prisoner for quite a while. And the hell of it is, he came back, and after a couple of years, he committed suicide.
Oh dear. That's awful too bad.
Too bad. And I found out this week, my daughter-in-law has one of them smartphones or whatever they are, and she looked up a couple of army buddies, and it's really something. Their picture came right up in her camera, and both of them were dead. They died recently, you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
but you got to find out about that.
Me and Artie, you know, we're the same age, right?
Wow.
Right, we are.
Yeah.
You're older. By 3 months.
3 months or 3 days?
3 months, in
3
January,
months, okay.
February.
Right.
And he was in the parade in his uniform,
Yeah.
Wow.
and he's got on his shirt.
Yes.
Yeah. And when he came, he didn't want to wear it, and I insisted that
didn't
I
want
wanted him to put it on.
Yeah.
He deserved to put it on.
No, I don't know about that.
And,
It's been a long time, 71 years since I've seen it.
Great on the way to put it back
My
on.
daughter had put it away in a closet, I never even knew it was there.
Wow.
She said yesterday, you ought to wear your shirt going up. I said, what shirt? She says, the shirt you get out with. And sure enough, she produced it.
Fits you wonderful.
Well,
It does.
not
Looks great
quite
on you.
wonderful, but it fits me.
Well, you gotta.
I would say it's
at the
perfect.
same time, 71 years,
Yeah,
just like him, Artie.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I tried my uniform
Full-
on,
Full
and
uniform.
had to put, my pants had to be opened up this much in the back, and the night jacket, I couldn't button it. That's why I left it open today.
It's all right, that's still pretty good.
That's
It
all
is
right.
still pretty good.
Fine, except it was warm.
Did you say Addie had a story about a popcorn machine?
Yeah, I'm glad he was
Oh, no.
telling about his
Oh, that one.
experience on the
Very
base
much.
with a popcorn machine.
No, Donnie, brother Donnie, went over, and what did he say, 51
52,
to 52?
October 52.
I didn't see him until when I got out and got back from Korea in 54, so it's 3 or 4 years. And I happened to meet him at a party here in Monson, and he had your mother on in tow at the time. And anyway, he never said anything about what was going on. He didn't. I says, but Jesus, I was over there. I know what it was. I says, you know, we had to go up to the army base because we didn't have a place of our own. And one night, the goddamn popcorn machine broke down, and that place went wild. Jesus, didn't he get mad? What the hell are you talking about? Yeah, he didn't appreciate that.
No, I bet he didn't.
Well, it's interesting because when Dad got out of the war, he was in Augusta where he met my mom. But he was working down at Bath Iron Works. So even after he got out of the war, he was helping, in a sense. He was painting the big battleships in Bath Iron Works. And then after that, he got a job at Togus Veterans Hospital. And he ended up working on the psychiatric ward,
Yes, he did.
helping a lot of the soldiers who had PTSD. One night he had a funny feeling and went to do a bed check, and there was an empty bed, and he went and found the young man in the shower. He'd slit his wrists. So Dad put tourniquets on him and saved his life. So you could say that, you know, the people who went through the Korean War, sometimes it affected them. And in good ways and bad, Dad got that job, and it was good he could still give back when he returned.
Did you bring your guitar?
Okay, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And-
This, if you want to use it.